Welcome to the IDC TechTalk podcast. My name is Miles Dawson, I'm your host today. I run the emerging vendor team here at IDC UK. Here we will be connecting with leading analysts talking about topics and issues affecting the IT industry today. We'll be covering a wide array of topics such as security, augmented reality, digital transformation, Internet of Things, cognitive systems, among plenty of other topics too, providing some useful insights and predictions that will help you achieve your business goals. So before we get underway, if you don't know IDC, we're one of the largest market intelligence and advisory firms in the world with over 50 years experience in tracking the information technology, telecommunications and consumer technology markets. What this series will do is talk about current trends and issues surrounding the IT industry and hopefully providing some useful insights and predictions for the future as well. So without any further ado, let us begin our topic today, which is all about the changing face of IT security. And for that, I'm joined today by Duncan Brown, who is our Research Director for the IDC European Security Programme. Hello, Duncan.
Hey, Miles.
Duncan, can you give our listeners a little bit of background about yourself and the topic today?
I've been in the industry for over 25 years, started in application development, writing programs for secure banking transactions, and I've been in security pretty much ever since then. So what's interesting is that long perspective gives me perhaps a different view on security because it is very trendy right now. There's clearly a lot happening. There's lots of drivers that we can talk about in just a second. But essentially, the core problems that we are experiencing today are pretty much the same as we were experiencing 25 years ago. And some of the disciplines and practices are or should be the same. I think it's just that the scale of the problem has now got serious.
That's interesting. So you think the consumerization of IT has really had the biggest effect, would you say, on the security industry?
Partly. So when you democratize IT, that's great for empowerment of, everybody at large. I mean, they are teaching IT coding skills in schools to 6-year-olds now, which is great from IT literacy point of view. But I can tell you, in the syllabus for 6-year-olds, there's nothing about security.
No, absolutely.
Yeah, and so the next generation of professionals that are creating IT assets are not familiar enough with security, not building security into what they're designing. And that is one of the fundamental problems that we're facing right now, and I'm afraid we're reaping the consequences of that today.
Absolutely. So you feel that these organisations are almost being forced into a flux state where they have to change quickly without sort of planning in the future, or do you think they're...
So one of the big challenges for security that we have today is keeping up with the pace of business. So what I call security at the speed of business. And at the moment, security is going at the speed of security, which is slower than business, and it's getting left behind. So you have cloud services being adopted on a mass scale. We have IoT devices being shipped out and deployed on a mass scale with very little understanding of security.
It would be handy if you gave us a bit of a high-level overview. I mean, we just talked about consumerisation of IT there, which is pretty fascinating. What are the other big drivers in 2017, do you think, for the security market?
Well, there are 3 big drivers, macro drivers as we call them, that are driving a whole bunch of activity in security. So the first one is what we call the dynamic threat landscape. That's more bad stuff happening more often to more people, more or less what I said earlier. And partly that is created by this broad use of technology that was never designed to be secure. And when the risk was relatively low, that wasn't an issue. Now the risk is higher, it suddenly is an issue. It's a really big issue. So it's partly to do with that. It's also partly to do with the increase in the criminal fraternity, understanding that the rewards from cybercrime are very high and the risks of being caught are very low. So it's almost the ideal. I'm not advising listeners to adopt this as a career path, but it is almost the ideal criminal venture to get into because high rewards, low risk. Why would you, if you were of that mindset, why would you not? So that's a big dimension. And then, just recently in the last couple of months or so, we've seen a much more sinister dimension. I know it's been kicking around for a while, but we've seen, the first instances of accusations where one nation state is trying to impact the democratic process of another nation state through hacking of emails, releasing information to the public domain that affects the result of an election. And whether you think this is a conspiracy theory or whether you think it's fact or something in between, certainly there is a possibility of that happening now, and a lot of nation-state activity, nation-on-nation activity. The UK admits that it has an offensive capability. The US now admits that offensive capability as well. So all of that just raises the stakes in the cyber world. So, and that's just one driver. Okay, before we get started,
that's just the first one.
So that's just one driver. So the second driver is digital transformation. So that's the adoption of cloud and mobile, social, business, analytics, increasingly Internet of Things. And that's the big drive towards using those technologies for greater collaboration with other parties. So organizations are collaborating with their customers more, with their partners and supply chain. Also changing the relationship with their own employees using cloud technologies and so on. And that's great, again, for a business efficiency point of view, but really putting a lot of challenges on security. And security traditionally has said, no, we can't do that. You can't use cloud, you can't use mobile. Digital transformation is a business initiative, so that means it happens, whether security wants it or not.
Yep.
And so what we find is that it happens and security isn't involved, and then we get data leaks and a whole bunch of other stuff like that. But digital transformation really puts the emphasis on security, as I said earlier, to do security, but at the speed at which business requires it to do. So that's another big driver. And the third one is regulation, particularly GDPR, the General Data Protection Regulation, coming in May 2018, but that's just one of a whole tranche of legislation, much of which is coming out of the EU, but not exclusively. We have other regulations and rules and judgments in other countries, some of which create conflicts of jurisdiction. So that's always an interesting place to be. But by and large, the regulatory upheaval, increasing the consequences, in terms of fines, in terms of reputational damage of getting security wrong. So that's the third big driver.
That's actually quite interesting. It leads me on to one of my first questions, which is about GDPR. I've got a couple of questions around it, but the first one is, we hear a lot about GDPR. We hear a lot about it in the media, from yourself, in the media, all over the place.
Yep.
From someone such as myself, who's not an expert in security, is it going to have the impact that you're all suggesting, or is it just another one of the many regulations that the EU brings out that kind of changes things a little bit, but doesn't really have a real impact on the ground?
So I think we can be unequivocal here. I think GDPR is going to be huge, or in fact already is huge, and it's already having an impact. So we've got, I think, less than 18 months now before it is enforced. But that's going to be a very frantic 18 months as organisations work out what they need to do in order to be compliant, and then go and do it. I think the first thing I would say is that it's not just limited to security. There is a lot in GDPR that is related to security, but actually much more that relates to more generic information lifecycle management, information governance. And so I'm working with my peers across IDC in these data storage, information lifecycle, analytics, mobility, print, telecoms, a whole bunch of other areas that are also affected by GDPR. So it's much broader than security. But that said, the impact of getting security wrong is pretty profound from a GDPR point of view. I mean, the fines are high, the reputational damage from mandatory breach notification is potentially substantial. So there's a big emphasis on security market from that.
And what are the fines like? So if you're not compliant with GDPR, I mean, how bad can it really get?
So the maximum potential fine is 4% of global annual revenue, which is, by all accounts, it's a big number. So two things to say, I think, on the fines. One is that they are designed to be dissuasive, as they uses that word in GDPR. So they are supposed to hurt. Yeah. So if there's any naysayers out there that are thinking, oh well, nobody ever gets fined under the existing regime, why would it change under GDPR? There's absolutely the intent within the regulator community to levy fines that are dissuasive and act as a deterrent to other companies' non-compliance. That's one thing. The other thing, though, is you have to try really hard to get hit by a 4% fine. You have to be egregious in your non-compliance, essentially. And the converse is also true. If you can demonstrate that you've tried really hard to be compliant and you just got hit by a targeted attack, for example, then you'll still get fined, I'm sure, but what will determine the size of the fine is how well you respond to that. Can you evidence that you were trying hard? Did you have good audit trails? Do you have good forensics? Did you actually find the breach yourself, or were you told by the regulator or national authority or a third party? That's never a good position to be in. So if you find it yourself, so all these mitigating factors really do help. So I think most organisations, if they do get fined, will not be in the 4% territory unless they are in breach of, unless they just haven't tried hard, or unless they are in breach of one or two of the core principles of GDPR.
I mean, it's not just a couple of kids sitting in their bedrooms hacking video games anymore, is it? It's become an entire global problem.
Yeah, I mean, I come from the generation that grew up on the film War Games. I don't know, Miles, you're probably too young to have seen that. It's that kind of thing. It's kids in their bedroom, and that's kind of mentality that the security industry, I think, has grown up. This is an industry. The attacker community is an industry, and they are specialised. They are well motivated and resourced. They can, if they are motivated to do so, do anything, and I mean anything. They can get into any system if they are motivated to do so. Using a variety of techniques that we don't have time to go into today. So it is a fundamental societal and geopolitical issue now. This isn't just, as you say, kids in their bedroom. Although ironically, TalkTalk was kids in their bedroom. So that they still exist.
Yeah, they do.
But the more targeted attacks, sophisticated attacks are nation state sponsored or criminal, or possibly both.
Absolutely. So looking forward, I mean, IDC are thinking about their 2020 vision. What do you think's the big major changes coming down the pipe in the next by 2020 and beyond for the security industry?
Yep. So really trying to catch up with the digital transformation technologies. So cloud in particular is massive. Security of IoT we just talked about. I think that's also going to be massive. We're investing a lot in research in both of those areas. I think we are at the point now, cloud going mainstream. I think we're there or thereabouts. I think by the end of the decade we're saying something like 43%. So just under half of infrastructure will be off-prem cloud-based, whether it's hybrid or public cloud is that's debatable, but it's off-prem. That is only possible if we crack security, and I think security is now at the point in the cloud where it's as good, if not better, than you can affordably deliver on premise. So from a technological point of view, I think we're there or thereabouts. What we've got to overcome, particularly in Europe, is the perception of cloud, it being less than secure. And once we get past the security issue, is it private? Can we assure data protection? So back to the GDPR conversation. Again, that's happening. It's happening slower in Europe than it is or it has in the US, for example. So we are playing catch up in Europe, but I think that in the next 4 or 5 years, we'll get there.
I do believe that's all we've got time for today. I'd like to thank Duncan Brown for attending.
My pleasure. Thanks, Miles.
And thank you all very much for listening. Please join us next time where we will discuss another burning topic affecting the IT industry. In the meantime, if you would like to learn more about this topic and more, please feel free to follow us on Twitter at IDC_EMEA. And you can also follow Duncan as well. Duncan, what's your Twitter handle?
My Twitter handle is Duncan W. Brown, and you get a prize if you can guess what the W stands for.
Fantastic. You can also follow us on Facebook, on LinkedIn and YouTube. Thank you and have a great day.